Hey small groups, brilliant to be with you. Second part of Gideon, by faith. And I've called it, by faith God will provide today. For the last couple of months as I've been preparing this, I've just had this phrase going around, Jehovah Jireh. And that means God will provide. It comes from a little song, just one of the names of God in the Old Testament, but it reminds me of a song that I'm not going to sing for you today, but Jehovah Jireh, God will provide. And in this story of Gideon, we see God's incredible provision as he steps out in faith, that the Lord's highlighted him in that well, and he's called him and he said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. And Gideon's like, no, anybody else but me. And the Lord's like, no, I've called you. And what we see in this story of Gideon is the journey of faith. And that Gideon just keeps asking the Lord for more and more confirmation. And we can be a little bit surprised by that. It's like, really? So Gideon has this interaction with the angel, and then he has another encounter with the angel, and he's completely surprised that it's the angel of the Lord. And this is verse 22 of chapter 6. It's like, oh my sovereign Lord, oh my goodness, it's an angel. And then he goes into the fleece scenario where he puts out a fleece because he's putting that before the Lord. Lord, if this is really you, I need more confirmation. And sometimes I think we're really hard on Gideon, that we sit there going, come on, Gideon. But Gideon is about to fight an incredible battle against the Midianites. And so God is so kind. I think that's one of the things that we need to know. If we were to replace our story with Gideon's, for instance, and our story was to find itself in the Bible, and it's like James Rankin's story of faith, you'd be like, oh, wow, okay. But the journey that we go on is one of seeking the Lord. And that's what we see from Gideon, is that he says, God, speak, I want to hear you. Throughout the whole thing, he just wants to know the Lord's voice. And whether, at one point where he's asking the Lord for another sign through the fleeces, he's like, God, don't be angry with me. Because he knows he's going back to the Lord for more confirmation. But the thing that I'm encouraged by looking at Gideon is he's just like, God, I need to hear your voice here. Speak to me again. And the Lord does it because the Lord loves us and he doesn't want us to go down the wrong path. But that's the journey of faith. The journey of faith is highs and lows. It's not just this kind of upward, never-ending moment towards the Lord. It's that we have moments of closeness and moments of absence. But the key thing is that we keep asking to hear the Lord's voice in it. And that's what Gideon does. The second principle that I want to talk about is kingdom maths. So as we move into chapter 7, we see God thinning down this army. This huge, he's brought together 34,000 people, and God's like, do you know what, Gideon? Too many people. And so he turns around to them. He's like, if you're afraid, you can go home. At which point 24,000 of them leave. It's like, oh, wow, that's a lot to lose. But the Lord says, oh, I'm not done yet. And so he goes and makes them drink some water, and those that lap on their knees, he keeps. And so it's suddenly down to 300. Again, put yourself in Gideon's shoes. You're about to fight this massive battle, and the Lord's decimated your army. He's taken all of your people. He's like, no, you lot can go home. I only need the 300. But what we realise in this is that God's maths is not the same as our maths, that the Lord will provide in the way that he wants to. Sometimes we're fixed on, Lord, you've got to do this. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it my way. And that's what we see in this. And I tell this amazing story about Maz, who's part of our community, who is a fourth-year medical student who needed some money for her tuition. And her mum, who's abroad, was really struggling to pay it. So she started a GoFundMe campaign and went on various things, but managed to raise £24,000 in a week period. And she talks about this phrase, Jehovah Jireh, when she wrote me and sent me the story, she talked about Jehovah Jireh, and I was so encouraged because I was like, yes, the Lord will provide. That's it. Kingdom maths, trusting in kingdom maths, not in our maths. Thirdly, all he wants is our yes. Isn't it interesting that God uses this 300? That he takes this 300, and that it's not just Gideon's journey, but it's his journey with this 300. And he takes them. There's this beautiful bit where God's like, you're probably still afraid, Gideon, aren't you? And if you are afraid, then just go down into the camp and I'm going to show you something. And I think he goes into that to see the camp, and he just sees the Midianites as thick as locusts all over the place. And you can imagine him feeling utterly overwhelmed. But then he overhears this interaction of this dream that someone's had about this loaf of bread knocking down a tent. And Gideon's probably like, what? And the outworking of it is that the Lord is going to use Gideon to destroy the Midianites and to win the battle. And it's God's kindness again to Gideon that he enables him to overhear that. And suddenly this fills Gideon with faith. And his response in verse 15 of chapter 7 is to want to worship the Lord. He's like, I just want to worship you, God, that you're going to give us the victory. All he's asking for is our yes. And then finally this, that God provides for his purposes, but he uses us. Provision, God's provision. We then go into the battle scene itself, and that they go up the 300 men and they make this almighty racket and they blow their trumpets for the Lord and for Gideon. And suddenly the Midianites start attacking one another, and they run terrified because of the noise of this 300, that the Lord knew what he was doing, that he reduced and he reduced and he reduced. And the reason that he reduced was because it was about his glory. He was like, I don't want you to boast that it's about you. I want you to know that this is a miracle from me, that I am the provider. It's not about you, it's about him. And just in finishing, I started talking about the Lord providing for our community as well. As we've moved into this next season, it's like the church is beginning to roar back into life again, that all 4 sites have been meeting again for the last couple of weeks. And it's beautiful, beautiful to see the gathered people of God inviting his Spirit amongst them. And that as a church, we want to open wide the gates of our community to say, come and meet Jesus, come and meet Jesus. But we also need to see God provide for our community as well. And he has been so kind to us over this COVID period. Is that our accountant wrote a little note just saying it's amazing to see the way that your community has been so generous during this period, that not only has he sustained us, but we've been able to give away over £40,000 to different organisations, whether it's Pembrokeshire Vineyard Church, we managed to plant them and to give them a good gift, to the Afghanistan refugee appeal in terms of for Tier Fund and Welcome Churches. We've been able to be generous as a church. But in this next season, as ministry comes back to life, I wanted to ask whether you would consider giving as well. Financially, for some of you, you haven't started that journey of discipleship. It's an invitation into it to join the rest of us who are already on that journey. And we're just saying, God, provide for us as a people, the plans that you've got for us, the things that you want us to press into. So we're starting new things. We talked about the gate building as well, also buying that. There are things that we'd love to pray for. We'd love you to pray for the gate. We're in the process of putting heads of terms together and mortgages. So pray that would come to pass. Pray for Northside pastors. Pray for our compassion ministries as they come out. But would you consider joining us in generosity as we step into this next stage? So Gideon has been a brilliant companion for these 2 weeks. By faith, by faith, by faith. Thank you.